Welcome, everybody. This is the first executive committee of 2022. It's Monday, January 10th, 6 p.m. We'll have a call to order. We'll start the meeting. Call to order, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Fisher? Here. Mr. Knipp? Mr. Simile?
Here.
Mr. Snyder? Here. Mr. Van Harn?
Here.
Mr. Wilkins?
Here. All right, so we need a motion to excuse Mr. Fisher and Mr. Knipp. Oh,
Fisher
I'm
is
sorry. Didn't see you walk in. Apologize.
Motion to excuse Mr. Knapp.
Second.
Motion, or I'll say aye.
Aye.
So just as a matter of housekeeping here for everybody, because of COVID infections, we've moved to the larger room today. We're asking that everybody social distance by 6 feet. And if you are able to do that and you're seated, you can take your mask off. If you're not 6 feet in social distancing, we ask that you keep your mask on, or if you get up, you need to put your mask on. Just because we have to say that at every meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Okay, I assume everybody, let's see, let's set the agenda. I know there's a couple things we were going to maybe add. We have to adopt the Robert Rules of Order.
Yeah, we need to insert after set the agenda and adopt it, and adoption of Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay. And then, what, are we going to have a discussion about the meeting switch, or is that happen elsewhere? For the finance?
I'm sorry about the.
About the meeting switch between finance and, is that out elsewhere?
I don't know that, I think we need to have a discussion with finance.
Okay,
I think it's probably premature at this point.
okay. All right, we won't put that on the agenda then. Any other amendments or thoughts on the agenda? We can adopt it.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, the agenda is adopted. Next, we have a person registered to address the committee.
So did you adopt?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we have not adopted
My-
Robert's rules.
I wrote that in and I skipped right over it. Okay, excuse me. So this is customary at the beginning of the year that we have to adopt the rules of order, the rules we use to perform the meetings. And it's generally accepted that we use Robert's Rules of Order. So do we have a motion to approve Robert's Rules of Order as our whatever, what are we doing?
As our guiding framework for
There you go.
discussion.
Motion to approve Robert's rules as our second.
Rules of this for discussion.
There we go.
I'm sorry, who's the second?
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the Robert's Rules of Order has been adopted for the year. Okay, next, it is, we have a person to address the committee tonight, Elaine Moskovitz. It's regarding the fireworks at New Year's. Ms. Moskovitz?
Okay, the other thing I would remind everybody, that's our microphone we're using for streaming, so please speak loudly if you could.
Thank you. My name's Elaine Moskovitz. I live at 2426 Canterbury Avenue. Executive committee members, village administrator, and police chief, thank you for allowing me to speak for other residents in Gulf Manor today who were disturbed by the gunfire and fireworks which occurred around midnight on December 31st. In the past, the most common reaction from strangers when I told them I lived in Gulf Manor was, "Where is that?" But the second most common reaction was, "It's so nice and quiet over there." Well, it wasn't on December 31st. While most of us have tolerated some celebratory fireworks on and around July 4th, what we experienced on the 31st was completely out of hand. My neighbor's children were woken up frightened, and I'm sure others were also. Any pets that were let out for their midnight potty break, I'm sure were frightened. And then when I learned that actual guns were also discharged, a lethal accident to one of our pets could have easily happened. Even if the person or persons were shooting off blanks, the noise would have easily triggered anyone who is suffering from post-traumatic stress from a previous traumatic incident. Executive committee members, we understand that some celebratory fireworks are to be accepted and are not advocating for a total banning of fireworks on holidays. But a certain preemptive communication regarding what will be allowed and the time frame when they will be allowed will help ensure Gulf Manor remains a nice, peaceful village. Furthermore, all residents can plan how to distract their children and when not to let their pets outside. Some guidelines regarding banning of gunfire and the loudness and length of time fireworks are permitted can be disseminated through our various trustee communication outlets, the website Go Gulf Manor Facebook page, and of course, our newsletter with the so ever trusty low-tech method of dropping it off at every door, along with copies in the free little libraries. Not only will these published guidelines be helpful for residents, they will prevent unnecessary calls to the police department. Thank you in advance for working on this quality of living Gulf Manor issue. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Moskowitz. Appreciate the words, and it was a reasonable advice, I think. Mr. Hurth, I'd like to direct that we look into that, or you do, and we'll respond to that later.
So Chief Campbell and I had a discussion about this on Friday when it came up. Chief, did you have, how many calls were there on New Year's Eve regarding noise? Did you get any?
Yeah, we received calls. Sometimes when there's multiple calls, dispatch will send one dispatch to us, letting us know there's multiple calls. So the officers were aware of that. They actually recorded footage of it. So, it's an issue we deal with from time to time, and we'll continue to do so.
And when you and I discussed on Friday the exorbitant amount of noise that took place, your officers on duty that night identified it as mostly coming from the East Lawn area, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is our ability to control what happens in East Lawn?
We cannot. My assumption would be that city dispatch was receiving calls as well, but it's so widespread for such a short period of time, it's very difficult to address case-by-case basis.
Okay. So what I would recommend is with the new administration in the city of Cincinnati and also a new mayor, when the time is right, we have a number of issues from that part of Cincinnati that need to be addressed. In fact, I spoke with the mayor today about a strategy that we'd like to formulate to start reaching out to the city to correct some of these issues. In the meantime, we have ordinances on the book, is my understanding, already controlling just indiscriminate gunfire. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, discharging of firearms within the village is not legal. There's some extreme circumstances where, like officers may have to put down an injured deer or something like that, law enforcement related, but it's not tolerated. The officers that heard gunfire on New Year's Eve were of the opinion it was coming from directly over here near the corner of Losanaville and East Lawn outside of Gulf Manor.
Okay. So what I would state, Mr. Van Hart, is that the administration and the police department will continue to work on it, and we'll report back at the next executive committee meeting what our progress has been. We appreciate it. I can't see her. We appreciate Ms. Moskovitz bringing this to everybody's attention.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Silva, do you have something you want to say?
I was just curious if we were aware of any issues specifically in the village. Like, were there any, not issues, but were there any complaints of incidents occurring in the village that we know for a fact?
We got general fireworks complaints, but there was nobody saying, for example, my neighbor's about to catch their car on fire. We just heard, it was very loud. The video that the officers captured at midnight of what sounds like gunfire was very loud. We got several calls from all over the village at the same time, so I think everybody was hearing the same barrage.
Thank you.
Was that video from Gulf Manor, or was that?
That was from the side door here.
Oh,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hurth. Any other discussion? So moved. Okay, thank you again, Ms. Moskovitz.
I do have one topic to bring up. Do we have to approve the meeting minutes from the last?
Yeah, that comes next.
Okay, sorry.
So moving on, I assume everybody's reviewed the minutes, and do we have a motion to approve it or change it, any changes to it?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Any, what is it? Any cer-
All in favor.
What's that? Oh, if I missed that.
We have a motion and a second, so now we'll be able
Okay, all opposed or all? I'm
to-
sorry.
all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes to pass the minutes. Okay, new business, Mr. Hurth, give us a general description of the priorities for this year.
So I whipped up a graphic. You can pass that out. So this is the year that we are going to concentrate specifically on economic development. And what that means is this is going to be a multi-pronged approach to improving our housing stock, continuing on the programs that we've had in terms of infrastructure improvement and sustaining our financials. This will be a program, and I don't like to think of the word program because program kind of says there's a beginning and an end to something. This needs to be the culture of our blood with this, that as we continue to move through and build on the successes that we've had previously, we start looking at our housing, code enforcement, opportunities for development. And the way I like to think about this right now is that there are three major plates that are in the air currently. The strategic plan, which council started on back in October. We'll be looking for dates to have our second session on that sometime in January. The housing census from Hamilton County, which the county is paying for. And as you may recall, that is an opportunity for us to have the county give us an idea of what our housing stock looks like, where we have opportunities, what the condition of the housing stock is. It should give us a blueprint for how to deal with code enforcement and what some opportunities for development in the future might be. The third actual plate in the air is the identification of development opportunities, and we'll do that through a third-party source called Urban Fast Forward. The two that we are really connected with right now, though, are the strategic plan and the housing census. The fourth plate that we need to toss in the air is the business census, and we really don't have a plan for that yet. That's something that we'll be working on over the next couple of months. As I previously stated in the last council meeting, I've asked Mr. Lanzer to lead the charge on economic development for us. This is going to be bringing all of the people at the county who can help us together and us communicating in terms of what our priorities are and selecting the kinds of things that will be most opportunistic for us to be able to achieve these goals. But what the graphic here hopefully demonstrates is that a big piece of this is going to be community engagement. What we found is in the strategic plan and the housing census, there's a real need to get feedback and discussion from our residents in terms of how they feel about the village, the kinds of things that they're looking for their elected officials to do, an evaluation of our services, those kinds of things. That also goes around some of the resources, and that's a direct input through We Thrive, which that committee has been up and running for over a year now. We have a pretty good handle on what's happening with education in the Cincinnati public school system. We look at the opportunity to branch that out with the other schools that operate in our community, and then nonprofit opportunities and how we can capitalize on things like Go Golf Manor that add a certain flavor to the community. So how does this committee fall into this? Well, in a couple of very strategic ways. The code enforcement piece of this is important because we now have Jim Putoff, who's our code enforcement official, who's actually making some significant strides in dealing with some of the code issues that we have in terms of property maintenance and maintenance of building codes. The Planning Commission this year, this is going to be a very important year for the Planning Commission because they will be helping us evaluate a lot of the building codes and some of the policies that we have moving forward. Those kinds of things will come to this committee and go to the full council for consideration and for passage. In addition to that, we'll also be looking at some things that we've talked about in previous years but haven't gotten to because of COVID and other distractions we've had, such as the relationship that we have with tenants and landlords. We'd like to revive the discussion about the tenant-landlord licensing program. We'd also like to have some additional discussions. In fact, first out of the gate is going to be controlling pods, dumpsters, and portable outhouses in the village. In fact, in your packet, Mr. Donnellan had sent some initial information to us. It's actually a draft of an ordinance that was done from Montgomery. That's nothing that we need to act upon this evening, but that's there for your reference so you can read about that, and I would like to have that on the agenda for the next executive committee meeting so we can have some in-depth discussion about that. Mr. Van Hart has asked a couple of times, how do we get things onto the agenda? How do we make legislation happen? And that's really the beginning. It's a spark of an idea that we see that the administration or the police department or the general operations of the village sees that there's a void in controlling something that is having a negative effect on the neighborhood. We look for content experts to give us ideas of things that have happened in other communities, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to. Then we'll bring that information to this committee to have debate and discussion about what might be a best fit in a Golf Manor-sized ordinance. This is, from an administration priority standpoint, this is what we'd like to focus on this year. There's going to be the day-to-day stuff that comes out. We have a lot of loose ends that need to be wrapped up from last year, regarding our fire services and what we see as being the long-term coverage of Golf Manor's fire protection and emergency medical services. But those kinds of things, even though they're important, this is the kind of stuff that's going to the next level. Our revenue is stable, our expenses are stable, although expenses do continue to increase, and with inflation that we're dealing with, that's going to continue to be something that we need to deal with. We cannot continue to expense ourselves into profitability. We have to be good at expensing and making sure that we're keeping expenses as low as they are. But for us to move to that next level, we have to learn how to increase revenue for the village. And the best way to do that is to identify opportunities where we can either improve housing, create new development, or bring additional businesses into the village. And this all starts that process for us.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. It seems to me that the this is all the nuts and bolts of what we're doing. And the goal is to maintain taxes or make them lower in the future, right? Because if we increase the revenue, one of the defaults of that is to at least control taxes a little more.
Well, there's a benefit. Previous councils, and I'm talking over 10 years ago, felt that it was necessary to put a lot of smaller tax levies on the ballot. And as a resident of the village, I'm usually irked when I see there's yet another 2 mil tax levy that needs to be approved every several years. We've had to do that because there is a basic cost to providing services in the village, and that cost needs the revenue that we're bringing in. The way to fix that tax problem is to increase our revenue through economic development.
Yep.
So we know over the past couple of years that finances have stabilized. One of the best moves we made was moving to RETA because the regional income tax authority is better at collecting taxes than we ever were internally. They have the machine to do it, which has increased our tax revenue. What we need to look at now is taking areas like the Stover cul-de-sac, which is essentially draining the village coffers through services that we're always expending there, and finding a way to redevelop that area so it produces positively additional revenue for the village. Same thing is true for the North Weehee property. Those are empty lots sitting there, which again is a drain on village services because of the need for use of fire and police services if necessary. Getting those areas with productive businesses that are generating tax revenue is a huge plus for us in terms of not only decreasing expense, but then increasing our revenue. So it's all, this is really a part of a longer 5 or 10 year strategy. And I see this now as we're at year 6, when now we know that revenue is stable, we can start on talking about how to try and restructure things. And the best way to do that is by increasing our revenue in other areas and not just relying on property taxes to fund things.
Yes, thank you. The other big piece that's more intrinsic to this that excites me is I think it was, who was it mentioned? I think it was Matt. Just the quality of life should just be better. When I hear stories of where they had a bowling alley, a bakery, and all these other things, if we bring businesses in, hopefully those are the kinds of businesses that the quality of life will change and be exciting too. It's intrinsic, but it does make it attractive. You want to live here and stay here and things like that. So.
Does anybody have any questions?
What exactly does an urban fast forward do, aside from identifying development?
So Urban Fast Forward was one of the entities that participated in the TAP study that was done in 2019. And an example of the kinds of things that they do is they recently signed a contract to purchase the Macy's property, the old Federated Department Stores headquarters downtown, and they're going to convert that into residential housing and retail. They look for those kinds of opportunities and are connected into the business community in terms of who's looking for what to do where, and can bring opportunities to a community. One of the things that the strategic plan will do for us, which is aside from that, but it all is a kind of a progression. The strategic plan is going to help council and I know the committee members that were involved in that discussion, and will continue that, is coming to a consensus of what we see the village being in the long term, where we want to take ourselves, what we would like to see the end product be. A piece of that is getting feedback from the community, and that's kind of the next thing that we're working with and trying to flesh that out. That information then will be used with that third-party vendor, Urban Fast Forward, to help us find some opportunities or see where we sit in the marketplace. Andy, you sat in on some of those meetings that you have.
Yeah, so I think what they're really gonna help us do is strategize. So they're willing to take a look at our zoning specifically and do a market analysis and compare that to our zoning in order to help us craft zoning both on the commercial side and possibly the residential side to make development in Gulf Manor just be more attractive for the kinds of things we want to see here in Gulf Manor. They have, their client list is huge. They've had clients all over the place in the municipal realm, especially here in Hamilton County. So they have a level of expertise in this realm. They also are filling that just time gap. We're just two people here, and we're making as Ron said, we have a lot of plates in the air at any given time. They're going to help shoulder some of that for us, which I think will be invaluable and free us up to run the village on a day-to-day basis. But really, it's that expertise that I know we just don't have time to do a deep dive and comparisons and all that market analysis that we just can't do.
So it's having the connections. The three pieces of information that we are building this program on are already completed: the 2019 tax study, the 2019 We Thrive study, which talked more about demographics and the economic status of our residents, and then the information from the 2020 census, which is not yet finalized. Those three core pieces of information will help inform what we need to do or how we will deal with our overall strategy.
Isn't Urban Fast Forward a real estate company?
They do real estate stuff, but they also, they're multifaceted. One of their wings in which they specialize is in municipal consulting.
And my question is, are they there for us or there for themselves? I mean, very nice, they're there to, they care about their pocket. They're there to help out municipalities figuring out. But then the day they care about their pocket, they care about what at the end of the day they'll be able to gain out of remodeling a Macy's building. I'm asking, how do we know for sure they're not going to be manipulating us in a way just that they'll walk up with the best deal, not us?
Their client list is huge. I think if that was a concern, that conflict of interest, Blue Ash, City of Cincinnati, the neighborhoods in the City of Cincinnati, I mean, their client list is pretty extensive. We've already brought them in. They were part of the TAP study. Kathleen Norris, president of Urban Fast Forward, and she ran the TAP study. I mean, the county endorses municipalities to use that. Now, with that said, the village ultimately has the right to control their zoning. We have home rule here. We also have the right in any new development to do PUDs and restrict who can and can't participate or the roles of participation. I'm sure, knowing Kathleen Norris and her staff, they operate with a high degree of integrity. I don't think that they would participate in this to better themselves any differently than Dale and McBride would, who we're also contracting with, or the private real estate and consulting firm that the county engaged to do the housing study for us.
So I think there was a hesitancy when we first started talking about the strategic plan, that somebody was going to create this plan of stuff that we needed to do and hand it to us and say, here, go implement what we're telling you to go implement. And that's not the way any of this works. We're structuring this so that we have ample input from our council members. I feel very strongly that we have got to get on point with getting feedback from our residents, from all the various different demographic groups that are out there. and combining that information in whatever it is that we are going to ultimately see as our footprint for moving forward. The thing that we continue to do here is, if somebody would have said to me 5 years ago, Golf Manor will have $1 million in reserve, I would have said, that's a huge goal. How did we ever do that? But a phased approach, doing the things that were in phase 1, then doing the things in phase 2, and so forth, year after year after year, we got there. We have our reserve now that things like the pandemic happening last year, 2020, it seems like it was just last year. In 2020, we were not afraid. We weren't doing the things that other communities had to do to drastically cut their budgets because we were prepared, because we've been doing this expense control and watching what we spend and watching our revenue. This is the same approach to dealing with economic development. This kind of stuff is easy to let fall by the wayside as you're dealing with day-to-day crises. Because when you have issues such as the fire district that basically consumed all the oxygen in 2021, we should have been further along on this project. Unfortunately, we couldn't get there. I think it's important this year to get council, to get the administration, to get the police department, to get the service department. Everybody needs to be walking to the same beat in terms of how we get economic development taken care of. And this is my first crack at putting this on paper because I thought having something visual might help discuss more about this. This by no means is anything that's permanent. This is a living, breathing document that needs to be flexible to what our needs are. And honestly, that's, to me, that's the sweet spot of Gulf Manor versus the city of Cincinnati. We're fast, we're nimble, we're quick on our feet, we're small enough that we can make quick decisions if we need to. We are this lumbering bureaucracy that takes months and months and months and months to do things. Sometimes we do that. You know, government does work that way. But work, financial sustainability, safety.
Fascinating development about the Go Zero project that was discussed in executive last year in the Stover.
Yeah, we haven't had any more discussion with the people that we'd have to figure out a way to climb across, and until we can figure out how to climb those hurdles, I don't know what more we can do. One of them is the requirement of deploying village resources to supplement the project. Again, we're a small operation here. One of the discussion points has been that we use village-owned equipment and our service guys to assist in that effort there. And my feeling about that is I'll ensure that that's the best use of village service department assets point, but it's a discussion that we still have ongoing, and ultimately no final decision's been made, but we're still on that employees. What's been asked is that we devote about 20% of the time during the summer assisting that effort, and I'm just not sure we have to get data and how to make that happen or not.
Any other questions, discussion? Hey, I just take a minute and want to thank Ashley Schneider. I don't think she's here for her work lab. This is my first time leading a meeting like this, and my minor priority help us move a little faster. I know that Indian government, but I'm going to try different things, nothing heavy, nothing whatever, but to try to keep. And is that we're maybe working with Ron and Andy. Some of the bigger stuff, like the what I had, and is that we're maybe working with Ron and Andy. Some of the bigger stuff, like the is it the big, the landlord tenant, that might be a big, this is what we're gonna be focused on this meeting. If you can come prepared for this piece, this year, just send them to me, we'll see what we can do with them.
December 27th. It's in submitted reimbursement for the code funding. That will be a part of that. They're going to actually reimburse 90% of that funding upfront. So we should be seeing the next couple of weeks. And then the final 10% will be returned to us when we actually have a completed project. So a reminder that the funding for that.
Any other questions on that? The fire services?
Our association will only be fired in February 20th. Not necessarily from an initial transit discussion. I'm really bolstered by the fact that the two chiefs have talked to each other already, talking about transition. In fact, council will meet both the new chief from Miami, Chief Siki, this evening. He'll be here at 7 o'clock. In addition, as we are looking forward at this point, not looking back. And I think our association with DPS is going to be really good. Council, so that's what's happening with transition at this point.
Are there any other things on that transition, set of lists that you can think of offhand? Just curious.
I don't know what that list looks like yet. I think we just need to have some discussion on it. And like I said, I'm glad that SIFKI and Meter have talked to each other already. So they're starting to think about that. We have an entire building full of stuff that they're going to be taking with them. And that has to be, we need to figure out how to make that happen. We do have purpose for some of the space over there. So it's not that we're itching to get in that building, but if we, an expeditious ability for us to get in there would be very helpful.
Yeah, that was one of my questions about the stuff and some of the repairs. I know some stuff has been repaired.
So beginning to, he's got a lot.
Yeah.
Wrap his arms around. This included, he's here a week or two ago, taking that first step, along with Captain Rackley, trying to formulate a plan to tackle it.
Any other discussion? We're covering that tonight, are we?
Really, nothing really new. I think that's important that we keep that in front of us simply because it's an active issue. Mr. Putoff is working through various issues with certain properties at this point, and hopefully we'll have something more specific.
Are we prepared to take on anything else right now, the pending business? We have about 10 minutes.
Now, again, those are just placeholders. Like I mentioned, the pods, dumpsters, and portable restroom legislation, I think is a good first thing for this committee to be working on.
Okay.
And then that sample legislation is out there.
2022 at 6 p.m. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
We are still on. Hang on.
Especially distance, you're okay.
And we're clear.